Good morning to our listeners here on Long Island. It's a pleasure to welcome you to another episode of Suffolk Matters, where Suffolk County meets Suffolk AME. So our guest this week is Will Attridge and Ben Struck, both federal employees for the FAA. And guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So let's just talk a little bit. Obviously, we're going to have to get into this whole shutdown thing. But I think it's important to put it in context and just talk about what it is you guys do. Ben, I'll start with you.
Sure. So both Will and I are aviation safety inspectors on the pilot or operations side. Will's on the airworthiness or avionics side. We are responsible for overseeing, for the most part, general aviation, basically non-scheduled airliners. So not the Uniteds or Americans or Deltas, but the smaller aircraft. The smaller on-demand or charter aircraft, the repair stations, the pilot schools, from Montauk to Westchester, as well as all the general aviation activity in the 5 boroughs of New York City. We are out there inspecting these air carriers, we call them, so the small airlines, the pilot schools, the repair stations, making sure that they're following policy, following regulations, and then some of us are not there to do our job right now.
That's amazing to me. So, like, right out of the gate, those are very important jobs. You know, I think to some extent, some of the stuff I've read in the papers almost imply like, there is a shutdown, but it's, we're going to close certain parks because we won't have staff there to, kind of guide you through the park and whatever. And that's important. But we're talking about air safety, and we're talking about the ability to train the people that are flying these airplanes. I assume you guys would deal with helicopters also, right? I mean, yeah. So anything that's going to fly. What about drones? I mean, like a little.
Drones are actually part of my specialty.
Right.
I have a background in drones, and I would get complaints of drones flying near airports, in neighborhoods.
Sure.
Right now, I don't know how many complaints have come in. I'll have to deal with them eventually when I get back.
That's massive. So now you're talking about a backlog on an industry that's still operating with no oversight.
Correct.
That's massive to me. I mean, from where I sit, even just going back to the drones. I mean, nobody wants a helicopter falling out of the sky. That's plain, simple, obvious, whatever. But there's a reason why there's regulation on drones. There are people who buy drones because they think they're cool and they fly them around and they get a little too close to a tree and the thing falls on the ground, and that's the worst thing that's going to happen with their drone. And then there are people who have ill intent that could be looking to, I don't know, spy, not spy like, we heard enough about the Russians recently, but it's keeping track of someone, maybe being disruptive to businesses, and again, you talk about these drones flying around near airports. That's a problem. That's a huge problem.
Yeah. What we find is a lot of times the first time anybody's aware of the rules and regulations is they've already broken them.
Yes.
And we either get a police report or somebody reports them flying somewhere where they're not supposed to be, and the first time they get that information is when one of us sends them a letter or gives them a call, and a lot of times people are just unaware. And that's part of our job is getting that word out there.
Absolutely.
Of what you can and can't do when you buy one of these drones.
And I imagine there are some people, probably a lot rarer, that are very much aware of the rules, and they're doing what they want to do anyway.
Absolutely.
And that's a problem. I think that's a huge problem.
Dan, you mentioned business too, because there is a regulated side of the drone or unmanned aircraft system world where people are able to go use their drone for commercial purposes to earn money, real estate shoots or
weddings, right?
Weddings, they want to surveil a farmland or something we used to do with traditional aircraft. And my understanding is the people that are applying for those waivers now to FAA headquarters are unable to get those waivers processed. So they may be putting their business in jeopardy. They may not be able to perform that function or do it legally.
Further economic impact. And that's something that interests me about this whole thing. So we talk about a shutdown being in place and a certain section of the federal workforce unable to do its job, but there are entire industries that are built around access to the federal workforce to get their job done. You know, if you've got contractors anywhere in the country working on a federal project and their oversight is furloughed, what are they doing? Are they working? Maybe. Will their work actually pass inspection when the workers come back and take a look at it? Maybe, maybe not. Are they sitting at home also, you know, hoping to God this thing is going to be over and they'll be able to get back to work and provide for their family? And that has a trickle-down impact across communities, because that money that's not coming in is also not being spent. And not being spent means maybe that deli closest to where you guys operate and you occasionally get a sandwich, they're seeing, you know, they're feeling it a little bit. Not crazy, but they're feeling it a little bit.
It's definitely out there.
I think one of the crazier things, though, is this concept of the backlog. You know, all of it could be. So let's assume everybody goes back to work tomorrow. Everything that's happened for a month has to be caught up on, along with everything that's still coming in.
Correct.
You know, and the longer this thing stretches on, the deeper that backlog is. So the whole concept of, listen, you guys just sit it out while, you know, I don't want to get into the political debate one side or the other. You know, Democrat, Republican, is the president, is it Congress, is it, you know, this person or that person? But the fact of the matter is, everybody goes out and votes for the person they think is going to act the best on their behalf. And this is a clear example of government inaction, and it's having ramifications.
Absolutely.
So, and let's talk a little bit about that, I guess. You know, I think it's very interesting what you do. I think it's very interesting work-wise, what that impact is going to mean to the everyday person. But you guys are everyday people too. You guys are guys with jobs that are currently not earning, you know, and your coworkers as well. And we're seeing things, you know, where the FBI is doing a food drive for their own employees. You know, our association, a number of the different unions around here, around on Long Island, both in Suffolk and Nassau, are putting together food drives and trying to come up with support services for all of the workers that are furloughed. But how has this impacted your personal lives, you know, and your coworkers' personal lives?
This is Ben. I'm going to speak for me. You know, this is obviously a challenging time. I have a wife that's a freelance musician, so her income is varied.
Right.
We really rely on my income to be the sole breadwinner, really, and provide for all the bills and our necessities for myself and my kids. This is a challenge, you know, and we're having, you know, almost daily meetings about financial stuff. I personally am still on furlough. I'm not recalled, so I had the ability to apply for unemployment, which I did. Yeah. So that's a little bit of income that I know I'll get. Yes, I'll have to pay it back. I'm okay with that. Yeah. It allows me to make sure that I have groceries and we're paying our bills as best we can. I mean, we're having to negotiate with some of our utilities and some of our creditors, but it really puts a strain on the family life. Right. On our ability to, what can we do? What can we provide for our children? Right. I was saying we went out to Broadway the other day for something we had bought for Christmas for our girls. And that's, you know, we had to think about that. Are we going to be able to use the tickets? Yes. Do we have to make some changes in terms of, you know, our pre or post-show activities, eating out less, you know, we've had a lot of support from the community, which has been great. People offering us meals, offering to buy us some food, provide groceries for our refrigerator. So the family and community support has been great, but it's a struggle, and there are folks that are recalled that are unable to apply for unemployment. Right. Or some folks are out there working second jobs. You know, the union we represent, we have employees both on the aviation safety inspector side, which is what Will and I do. Yeah. We also represent technicians who are out there maintaining the navigation and communication equipment to support everything that happens in the airspace system. Right. So they're out there again, forced to come to work. Essential employees or accepted employees, and they are not earning anything. There's no paycheck coming. And some of them are going out and having to work a second job, maybe Uber or drive a truck somewhere. Right. And now they're throwing themselves into a situation where they have a very safety-critical job function where they need to come to work fatigued because they had to work an extra 30 hours that week or more in order to make huge problem. And we're really pushing the limit of seeing when is there going to be an incident We don't want there to be one.
Right.
That's why we want to get back to work, not worry about the distraction of when is our paycheck coming.
Right. And, you know, again, it's not a question of if, but when, you know. So none of this is meant, you know, from my part and my perspective as fear-mongering. The fact of the matter is when you have somebody that you hire specifically to look at these very safety-sensitive issues, and that should be their primary focus in their work life. That should be their primary focus. Being fatigued, being concerned about, you know, when is this going to be over? Should I walk away from this entirely and do something else? You know, then you risk deinstitutionalization. This has an effect on all of us, you know. So to some extent, I think people, you know, hear about the story or read about the story and they say, you know, it sucks for them. No, it sucks for all of us. Every person in this country relies on government services from the federal level, the state level, the county levels, town levels, all of that stuff. This is all very important stuff. And whether you get engaged politically or not, it's still going to happen. You know, it can happen because of you or it's going to happen to you. And those are the only two options. It's a disaster. That's all I can say is, from my perspective, this is a disaster. This is no way to resolve a political argument, you know. And again, you know, something that strikes me. I know I'm talking a lot. I asked you guys to come here to talk to me, and I'm talking a lot. So I apologize to the listeners about my rambling. But the symbol of America has been the Statue of Liberty, you know. And we've all heard, bring us your tired, your poor, you know. We're holding up all of these essential services that the government provides, things that I think have dramatic impact on safety and security for this country, to try and build what's going to be the new symbol of America, a wall to keep people out. I mean, this country was formed on another concept, another idea, and I think you touched on it a little bit before when you said, you know, America was the land of opportunity. It's what it should be. You should be able to go to your stable job, do these important things on behalf of all the people in this country, and have the ability to say to your wife, listen, work with music, see what you can do, you know, and have that, you know, so this job, in a sense, becomes the anchor to your family. And your family is part of the anchor in the community that you're in. And the services you provide through this job is an anchor to the safety and security of the American people. So, rant over. I'm done ranting. So, have you guys spoken to any of your coworkers? You get a sense from them, you know, how it's going for them?
Yeah, well, I'm the office representative for our labor union.
Right.
And I'm in constant contact with all the members of my office. So our office has approximately 30 members.
Okay.
It's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
There's no answers, a lot more questions than there are answers. We have quite a few people in the office that they're not sure, do I apply for unemployment? Do I go and get a second job? Do I start looking for another job completely? How long is this going to go for? How long can I make it without making some major changes in my life? And we try to supply them with as much answers as we can, but a lot of times it's just not out there.
Right.
Even me, myself, I'm lucky enough, I have a fantastic wife that has a very successful career, still impacts me very much. So right now we have one income, and we're not used to that.
Yeah, you set your life up the way you did, right? So, yeah.
You know, I'm able to talk to people all around the country. I'm interfaced with a lot of different representatives throughout really the Northeast, but have, you know, we cover people
National
all over,
reach.
all the way over the nation. And yeah, people are leaving. People who are scheduled to be hired or were scheduled to be hired in January are not able to accept the position and are basically going back to industry.
Right.
We have folks that are taking second jobs, some that have family crisis at home, you know, a wife who has cancer or a kid who's sick, and they're like, you've recalled me, but I can't come. Right. Luckily, some managers are able to respond to that at the human level and say, we understand, we'll figure it out. But then you get other messaging from above them saying you are going to be considered absent without leave if you don't show up to work tomorrow.
Right.
And that's just not a stress that anybody wants to have. No. This has been a pretty good job in terms of management interaction with the employee and saying, I have a family need that I need to take care of. And management, usually without exception, is able to say, no problem, take care of it.
Right. And, you know, you're talking about a job that is safety and security critical. What do you do? What do you do in this scenario if the heat goes out, you know? Again, I also think that maybe sometimes people just subconsciously, they think that there is a level of earning that goes on with these jobs that is just not realistic. And to talk about a living wage on Long Island, I mean, you guys are just maybe touching a living wage. This is not some super lucrative job where you're concerned about your investments. You know, if I don't get another 20 grand into this portfolio by this date, I'm going to miss this opportunity to see the big increase when the stock splits. I mean, it's just not part of the conversation at all. It is more, you know, let's make sure the kids eat first, and we'll figure out what's going to happen for us next.
Absolutely.
And I think we're relatively fortunate that it is a good job in terms of income. But you're right. We live here on Long Island, or I live in New York City. It's not a cheap place to live.
No.
You know, the locality pay that is adjusted into your gross income does compensate for some of that, but not all of it.
No.
And we're fortunate in our line of business to do okay.
Right.
But there's a lot of employees that we represent that are, you know, really struggling right at that, you know, above poverty, but it's not a great job. It's not, you know, it's not a lot of extra income for them.
No.
So to miss a paycheck or two, or, you know, potentially 3 coming up, it's a real struggle for them.
And, you know, Will, I've spoken to you about this a little bit. You know, there's the obvious thing of the private sector being able to probably provide more compensation. But I think you and your coworkers, and I think this probably goes coast to coast, Ben, if you can, you know, tell me if I'm wrong, you take these jobs because you're community-minded. You believe in the work that you're doing, and you say, you know what? I'm going to make less money. I'm not going to have that amazing life that comes with all of this money coming in, but I'm protecting America. I'm protecting the people in our local communities, and again, coast to coast. That's why people get into government work. You know, it's very different than someone seeking elected office and saying, I would like to be the one who writes the rules. You know, that's a very different job than being the person who has to enforce those rules in a common sense way that, again, protects safety and security.
I think without exception, we are all very dedicated aviation safety professionals. We are very passionate about our job. We take it home with us, whether we're legally allowed to or not at night. You know, it might sit with us overnight. You know, sure. Somebody we interacted with or an airline we're working with, are they doing the right thing? And maybe it doesn't keep us up all the time, but certainly might wake us up, or it's one of our first thoughts in the morning.
Right.
After, you know, I hear the kids dressed and ready to go to school and they have, you know, lunch money, is what's going on at work? What can I do to make sure that particular operator that we deal with is going to remain safe? Thinking that someday my family could be on that airplane or could be training with that particular school.
Absolutely. All right, well, there have been reports that TSA workers are calling out sick, presumably to find work to pay bills. Have you heard anything like that? Anybody on your side of things doing that as well? I mean,
I think, again, throughout the country, there's going to be random instances of that in our line of work where people have needs that they have to meet. I know there's an employee up in Maine where he basically said, I need to go take this job in order to make sure that I have income to put food on my table and my kids' table. Now, there may be a potential disciplinary action when everything comes back to normal, and they'll do an investigation, and the management at least is saying, hey, we're willing to be flexible there. We understand why this happened, why you weren't able to report back to work when we recalled you. TSA, I understand, had a 10% sick out on a recent travel day, and that is, I think a lot of people are telling their direct manager, their direct supervisor, I need to work getting money. You're not paying me right now.
Yeah.
And that's an undue burden, an undue stress on my life.
Right.
Again, this, you know, we're getting information from the Office of Personnel Management. This is considered AWOL if you don't show up. You're going to be considered absent without leave, which then potentially means you won't get paid for those days when normally you would have had the opportunity to take a sick day. I'm not seeing that sort of widespread yet, but it potentially could happen. I think we were just talking about there's the IRS folks are being called back to start processing tax returns when they get submitted. And there's been a semi-organized, is the only way I can say it, sick out or reluctance to return back to work.
I mean, these are all critical functions that we can't afford to have the people who are responsible to do these jobs worry about whether or not they've got food. You don't want a $10,000 oops on your tax bill.
Right.
You can't have the TSA guys, maybe taking it out on you when you go to climb onto a plane. We can't afford to have, whether by neglect or ill intent, something to go bad with these smaller airlines. I mean, this is very different than the narrative that's kind of been portrayed so far of like, yeah, there'll be a couple of parks that you can't, like the trees will still grow. The animals will take care of themselves. They'll run around, they'll eat.
Except in Joshua Tree when they cut down some trees that took 500 years to grow, but
that's
another right. So now, again, was that accidental or was that ill intent? The people who were there to make that determination and prevent that from happening, they weren't at work.
And that's some of the word that we'd like to get out also, because in the press you hear a lot about TSA and you hear a lot about air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when you think of the FAA, you immediately think of air traffic controllers. And we work for another side of the FAA called Flight Standards that not a lot of people even realize that we're out there doing what we do.
Right.
And we add a layer of safety across the entire national airspace that right now is not being carried out.
Not even remotely. Yeah.
I mean, we talk, everything that we do is risk-based analysis. They have what they call the Swiss cheese model, which some people are familiar with. Essentially, for an accident to happen, multiple things have to line up. They call it the Swiss cheese model because all the holes would have to line up just perfectly.
Right.
Usually 5 or 6 things have to go wrong before an accident occurs. Our job is to make sure those holes don't line up, make them smaller, eliminate them, move them if necessary, to make sure these things don't happen. And right now, there's 4,000 safety inspectors that do the job that Ben and I do. We are not out there doing our job.
4,000 people making sure that these, I mean, and the airline industry relies on this stuff. Absolutely is an integral part of this. Now, again, I keep talking about, neglect or ill intent, but people are people, right? And when you have federal workers like yourself out of work, you're going to behave like people, and you're going to figure out how am I going to get food. And we talk about the IRS people coming in. They're going to behave like people. Okay, I'm not getting paid. My mind is not on what I'm doing. I made a $10,000 error, whatever else. But for-profit businesses, those are also people. And at some point in time, it's going to sink in, whether through neglect or ill intent. Hey, no one's coming to look. Don't worry about it. The guy's not coming today. They're all off. And something's going to be missed. Or someone else is going to say, I've got this opportunity to do this bad thing. And I'm sure that's way less frequent than the neglect side of things. I mean, most commonly, it's an assumption on my part, most commonly you just find people who, cut corners, did something to save a buck or, cut down some time and give themselves an easier day because people are people. But some people are bad people. And the people who are supposed to be watching out for that, thousands of them aren't able to.
Right. We like to talk about what we call normalized deviation, right? So you're driving down the road, you're used to driving that highway, and it's been a while. I haven't seen a cop behind that tree in a long time. Mm-hmm. So speed limit's 55. All right, I'll go up to 62, and maybe a week later it's 65, and maybe a week later it's 72, and all of a sudden, it's constant speeding, and you're allowed to do it. Yeah. The first time you see a cop out there, oh boy, I'm going to slow down, and now it's time to obey the speed limit. We're not out there to help make sure people are obeying the speed limit in our terms. And
in your terms, the speed limit is preventing planes from falling out of the sky. Again, that sounds like fear mongering, but that is, when you talk about the Swiss cheese model, that's the worst case scenario. That's why you guys took the job that you took that doesn't pay as well as what the private sector might pay you, to prevent these types of things happening on behalf of the people of America. And I'll say thank you, but I wish the federal government would say thank you also and let's get everybody back to work, I mean, enough's enough.
Usually the next question when people hear this stuff, they get a little bit outraged and they want to know what they can do. Contact your congressman. Let them know how you feel about it. Tell them to open the government back up.
Yeah, it's a very good point. That's a very good point. So we've touched on a lot of things. I've probably talked more than I needed to. I just want to open the floor to you guys. Is there anything that maybe I missed that, some talking point that you want out in the world that people should be aware of?
I mean, Will said it. It's really contact your elected folks. Let them know this is unacceptable. Get us back to work. And they have brought a lot of us back to work, but not all of us. And now you have that distraction about getting paid. When am I going to get paid? So get us all back to work. Get us paid, please. And then I will say that the community outreach has been really nice. I've seen a lot of solidarity, a lot of community support. It is America. It's great. There's some Facebook groups out there that have been great to sort of refer people back to programs and services that either national chains or local food banks and soup kitchens, et cetera, are offering for federal workers. But it shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't need that. Right. We should be able to know that we have a good job and a stable job and we're going to get paid on time.
I agree with you, And all of this, again, just touching back on the earlier point, to almost shift the symbol of this country from the Statue of Liberty and the concept of bring us your tired, your poor, to a fence. You're not allowed in, Again, in a lot of these instances, from what I'm aware of, it's still people trying to flee dangerous and oppressive government and situations, because, again, you talk about the drug cartels. That doesn't just exist because it exists. There is corruption on all levels of governments down there that allow this stuff to go on. So America, seen as this standard of hope, this place where you can go and work your job, and that job would be the stable anchor to allow your wife to pursue her music career and still be able to take the kids out for their Christmas present, and maybe even get them some popcorn, and to have the situation like you're in, Will, where your job is stable and secure, allowing your wife to pursue something bigger and better for herself. To fold that all back into the community. I mean, that's what America is. That's what America is about. And to try and take us away from that model to the you can't come in here, you're only allowed in if you're from certain countries and you're a certain type of person and whatever else. Never in our history has that been the case. So I don't know. I'm just going to wrap there. It's frustrating. I feel like if I'm going to go any further, I might say some things that I won't be able to take back. So our guest this morning was Ben Struck and Will Attridge. They work for the FAA. They're currently furloughed, and were sharing stories with us with the critical functions that they provide for the federal government, the protections they provide all citizens in this country, and talking about some of the other agencies that they're aware of and what they're going through and what their coworkers are going through while being, furloughed or in some instances being asked to come in and work without pay. And thank you for joining us this morning, to our listeners, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for having us, Dan.